Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Boundary Systems Webinar Wednesday. My name is Sevi Beaver, and this week I will be walking you through what's new in Creo 8.0. We are now at the exciting time of year where a new version of Creo is released, and we have a whole bunch of enhancements that we're going to cover today in lots of different areas of Creo. So we can see an agenda, tentative agenda listed right here. I'm first just going to give a little introduction to Boundary and myself, and then I will jump right into covering a whole lot of changes, new features, and improvements that they've added to Creo 8.0. I'll be doing a few demonstrations throughout, and then at the very end, I will open this up to a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the questions section. I may see them midway through, but I'll definitely be able to see them when I'm done and be able to answer any questions you all have. So a little bit of background on me. My name is Sevi. I come from a mechanical engineering background. I've been with Boundary for coming up on 3 years now, I think. And I've used various CAD software for 7 or 8 years, AutoCAD and SolidWorks first. And then Creo for the last 3 or so years. So Boundary Systems, we are headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, but we have employees and offices all around the world. We are mostly a PTC partner. So we will work with PTC products to implement a whole lot of solutions. So whether that is the software itself regarding licensing, or whether that is management or consulting, or working with companies to get the best possible use that you can out of the software. Here are just some awards that we've received. The main one I'm going to talk about is just the PTC Certified Training Partner. As the lockdown is starting to recede, we expect to be doing a lot of training in the coming months. So if you'd like to join in and be a part of that, there will be some information at the end of the slideshow. And lastly, here's just some other software we work with besides PTC products. So a couple main ones, Keyshot and Moldex 3D. These are just things that we found offer solutions that PTC products just don't quite do in the same way. So we offer solutions with these products as well. All right, so moving on to the updates to Creo 8. I'm going to start out by talking about some general interface changes to the appearance of Sketcher, then the modeling, assembly, and drawing interfaces. And then I'll do a little demonstration that covers these sort of general changes before moving on to some more specific ones. So the first thing you'll probably notice when you open Creo 8 is that they've added datum plane fill display. You can see this in the bottom left of the screen in figure 1. Essentially, the datum planes are just going to be shaded, and you can see that where they overlap, they're shaded a deeper color. So it just improves the usability a little bit and makes working in 3D a little bit easier. Next, they've modernized the constraint icons. Essentially, they do this in every version of Creo, or at least the last few. They've made constraint icons just a little bit better looking. So they've done this again. They are just more user-friendly, easier to see, easier to click than they were in Creo 7. So moving on to sketching enhancements. It is now much easier to enable and modify the dimension color backgrounds. So this is something that was added in Creo 7. Essentially, a rectangle can be added around the dimension values so that they're easier to see. So you're now able to edit this color through a configuration setting to be maybe something that's easier, that stands out, I changed mine to gray. And it's now very easy to quickly enable or disable these dimension backgrounds with just one click of the mouse. Additionally, we have a new geodesic curve option added in Sketcher. This will essentially take the shortest possible path around existing geometry to connect 2 points. So this is a new new curve option that may have a lot of very great enhancements for surfacing and similar applications. So moving on to assembly enhancements, we first have a modernized toolbar. This toolbar now contains the placement status of whichever component you're placing. So for example, partially constrained, fully constrained, etc. This is going to be a common trend across Creo 8. A lot of these toolbars were updated to make them a little bit easier to read, easier to navigate. So you can see an example of that at the bottom of the screen in Figure 1. This is the toolbar for placing a component in an assembly, and we can see that it's just much more user-friendly and easier to use. Next, we are now able to reference automatic representations or user-defined representations when we are creating an external shrink wrap or external copy geometry. So previously we weren't able to use a simplified rep or similar when creating external geometry, external features. And in Creo 8, we are now able to do that. Worth noting, this is off topic, but forgot to mention at the start, there are actually a lot more enhancements in Creo 8, but we're only going to be covering 28 or so of the big ones. So a lot of these toolbars were updated in little ways. That'll make them better, but if it's minor, we're just skipping over it. So moving on to drawing enhancements. First, we have modernized drawing sketching tools. So Sketcher in the drawing mode is going to be similarly modernized. We also have the addition of datum feature symbol annotations to the symbol palettes. And similar to that, we have new gallery layout to browse symbols. So a lot of these older looking menu options in the drawing interface were updated to kind of be on par with the changes they made to the assembly and part interfaces. And lastly, for drawing enhancements, we have leader note callouts for bodies. So as you're probably aware, multi-body support was added in Creo 7.0. So going into Creo 8, they're just continuing to add additional functionality relating to multi-body. And one of those is leader note callouts. So a couple more features that kind of expand on the multi-body support added in Creo 7. We now have custom groups. And going along with that, these custom groups are going to be placed in a design items folder in the model tree. So you can see that on the right. This design items area on the model tree is going to be above everything else. And essentially it combines materials, which was previously also at the top of the model tree, and bodies, which was on the top of the model tree in Creo 7. So those two areas, quilts as well, are now combined into a single design items folder that can be expanded. And you can actually make subfolders containing any kind of blends of quilts, bodies, or materials to better organize your models as well. So that's just a pretty big design tree change that makes working in multi-body just more customizable. Additionally, we're now able to easily edit the transparency of bodies. So this can now be done in the quick access toolbar with just a single click. We can edit transparency and also through an additional menu in the InGraphics toolbar, we're able to adjust what that default transparency value is. So I'll show you all how to do that in just a second. And lastly, we now have part level bombs. So with the addition of multi-body and just the fact that you can now have multiple bodies in a single part file, it makes sense to add part level bombs now rather than just assembly level bombs. So with that new functionality of multi-body, we can now do this at the part level. It now makes sense to do that at the part level. Next, I'm going to talk about a couple of surfacing enhancements. The first is going to be, once again, an updated dashboard. We will find that the style and warp dashboards have been overhauled and made much easier to use and much more user-friendly. And the next feature is improved quality of the Align to Curves tool. This one might seem a little minor, but actually has pretty big implications. Essentially, this improvement vastly improves the reconstruction process in generative design. So by improving the overall quality of freestyle geometry, it's going to result in a higher success rate for reconstruction and merging. It's also going to reduce potential very high stress areas when analyzed in something like Creo Simulate Live. So essentially, this Align to Curves tool has been much improved, and you'll see much higher success rates in generative design and simulation when using it. All right, I'm now going to do a short demonstration to get into Creo 8.0 and show you all how it looks. So here we can see just a part file. It's just a little headlamp type thing with a button on top. And the first thing you might notice are the datum planes are filled in. This is a good example because the top plane is a bit extended since we're kind of working on this top plane, and we can see how this datum fill display makes viewing things in 3D just look a little bit better and a little bit more realistic. We can disable the plane fill display if we'd like, and this can be done through the InGraphics toolbar up here. So where we would usually choose to hide or display various datum features, we now have an option for plane fill display, which we can easily enable or disable whenever we would like. All right, so for the next example, I'm going to open Sketcher. So right off the bat, you'll notice that these are the dimension backgrounds I was mentioning. They were actually added in Creo 7.0, but we have expanded functionality for these in Creo 8. This includes a button, which can be found in the top left of the ribbon, which allows us to easily enable or disable these whenever we would like. I mentioned that the color is now customizable. So just to show, if you all are aware of config settings in a config.pro file, I have a couple here that were added: sketch dim background color, and the ability to set this through RGB. Excellent. Constraint icons, once again, were updated. Just a little bit, again, better user-friendly. We can see that when I hover over something, the corresponding geometry that's constrained is going to show in purple. And it just really goes along with making this easier to use and more user-friendly. All right. So next, I'm going to direct your attention to the model tree. We can see this design items area at the very top, which has been added. So previously, this would have bodies, quilts, and materials listed separately. This has now been combined so we can easily hide or show all of it at once. We have a couple quilts and bodies that are still in these default categories, but most of these have actually been moved to some custom folders that I've created. So we can see that these custom folders are able to group features, bodies, quilts, materials, etc. This just helps to better organize your model, especially with multi-body support being added. We can see that I can, for example, click any part of this folder, any folder or subfolder, and it'll select the features associated with that. For example, this split folder, I can have one body designating the top of my model, one designating the bottom, and the split itself. So to create a new one of these folders, it's really easy. We can see in my quick access toolbar, I can just create a new custom group. I can just go ahead and rename that whatever I'd like. I'm going to name it button. And I'm just going to move an associated quilt and button body into this new folder I created. Very quick and easy. I can also show snapshots of these quilts. So if I select this quilt, and I'm just going to right click and show snapshot. New functionality in Creo 8 is that I can show multiple snapshots at the same time. So as long as I don't middle click out of this selection, I can pick another quilt as well. I can right click show snapshot and see where this quilt would interfere with either the other quilts or various bodies as well. So I'm going to exit out of that. And now I'm just going to show the new transparency functionality we have. So in the quick access toolbar, if I just go ahead and select this button body, I'm able to just click make transparent and apply transparency to that automatically. And additionally, if you look to the in graphics toolbar, we can see that the default transparency can very quickly be set for either quilts or bodies. So if I change this to 25, we can see it's a little less transparent. Or if I just want to click and drag anything from 0 to 100, I can do that as well. We can see now it's fully transparent. All right. So next I'm going to talk about whole functionality changes. First of all, there's new whole UI, which we can see at the bottom of the screen. Going with the trend of updated ribbons in Creo 8, this one is a lot better and very much updated. We can see that it's much easier to designate between simple or standard holes, to select how we want to set the profile. It's just much more user friendly. Additionally, the placements tab not just for holes, but actually for every feature, is now not going to overlap with the model tree by default. So we can see that placement tab kind of highlighted in red is moved over to the right. And that's just to reduce interference between these features. We can also unlock those tabs from the ribbon themselves and move them to wherever we would like. It's just better and more user-friendly, at least in my opinion. Additionally, we have enhanced support for tapped and tapered holes, enriched thread handling options, and the ability to create multiple holes in a single hole feature has been added. So this is going to be really great for anyone who uses a whole lot of holes in any kind of set pattern. So I'll go ahead and show this new functionality as well. So here we can see I have a wheel created, and on the top surface of that wheel, I have an octagon just already created in a sketch. So I'm now able to just select this sketch and click hole. And we can see that it's automatically going to create 8 different holes in this one feature. So the placement tab, as I mentioned, by default, it's just going to be to the right of the model tree. Just reduces the amount of clicking. Everything's much neater and easier to access, in my opinion. Additionally, the different types of holes and the different profiles. Before, you couldn't exactly see what these options were without hovering over them. And new users often had a whole lot of trouble using the hole feature for that reason. So we can see my type is sketched. If I want to, instead of on vertex, I could place these on midpoint as well. So on the midpoint of all the different sketch segments, it'll create a hole. So I'm just gonna change this diameter a tiny bit to make it 10.5. And I'll make these through all. And okay. Now we can see in the model tree, I have a single hole created, and this is just going to be one feature based on one single sketch. And we actually don't have all of those different holes listed as separate features. We're able to create all of these holes in a single hole feature now. So additionally, if I want to apply a feature to every hole, we can do this really easily with reference patterns. So I'm just going to apply a chamfer to any one of these holes. Okay, and I'm able to just pattern this, and we can see that reference pattern is going to be selected by default, and we're able to apply that to these new hole features as well. So I click OK, and we can see that the pattern actually does create all these different chamfer features as we'd expect. But all these holes are, as I've said, now contained in one feature, and that is new functionality to Creo 8. All right. Next, I'm going to cover new changes to Creo Simulation Live. The big one here is the addition of steady state flow analysis. So those of you familiar with Creo Simulate Live, at first we had 3 different types of analysis. We had thermal, we had modal, and we had structural. Recently we had flow analysis in Creo 7 added as well. But in Creo 7, we only had transient flow analysis. So looking at flow over time with output of seconds. So for example, over the time of 0 to 2 seconds, what's the flow going to look like? So now we have steady state flow analysis added. So essentially, we can look at what our results will be given infinite time. So how this will reach equilibrium And we're able to see those results much more quickly than just running a transient analysis and letting it run for a very, very long time. Additionally, probes have been improved. So simulation probes that allow you to see data at various points. These are now improved. You can look at graphs from any probe point that you would like, and you can now export numerical results as well of this data. So to demonstrate this new CSL functionality, I created a generic water faucet. And to start my simulation, I'm just going to go ahead and open the live simulation tab. We can see that I have a fluid analysis already created, and we have a couple boundary conditions here. So our initial temperature is, we can see is set to 20 Celsius. And the material is set to be water. So this open internal cavity is set to be filled with water at that certain temperature. All right, so to start out, I'm going to add some more boundary conditions. So just moving to the inlet, I'm going to add some mass flows to both of these different inlets. So I'll just do mass flow, select the surface in question, and just going to add mass flow rates. Okay. And I'm actually also going to apply a temperature to this this left side as well. So kind of to model the two different temperatures of an actual faucet. So I can make this whatever temperature units I'd like. Let's do Fahrenheit. So we can do 40 Fahrenheit, which would be a bit cooler. We can have that represent maybe the cold water. All right, and then last I'll add another mass flow just to this other side, and I'll make it the exact same. All right, and lastly, I'm going to add an outlet pressure. Essentially, I'll just set that to 0, which is going to simulate atmospheric pressure. So even though that's showing just a 0, it's important to set that, and Creo will just assign atmospheric pressure to that. Now, if I drop down this little study button in the top left of my ribbon, just going to go to performance options and change this all the way to the accuracy side. This is a pretty basic simulation, so I'll just make it as accurate as I can. And additionally, from the same drop-down, we can see that I can enable transient mode or disable. So previously in Creo 7, transient mode was the only thing we had. So I'm just going to enable that so that we can show the difference. And I'll click Simulate. So Creo Simulate Live, since it's built right into Creo, it's going to be much faster than using a traditional simulation tool, even Creo Simulate. You're able to do this, even though there's a bit of a load here. You can see that it's already done now. It just took maybe 5-10 seconds, and we get a functional simulation of your model right inside of Creo. So the first thing to note, on the right side of our screen, we can see this legends that I'm moving around now, and we can see a time value that's slowly counting upward. As I mentioned, this is a transient analysis, so this is actually going to be changing over time, and we can see how that actually happens. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to change this to temperature. And we can see, since I set the initial temperature of the entire the entire faucet to be one thing and I created a colder temperature, we can actually see that that temperature is changing over time. All right. So to show simulation probe and some of the new functionality there, I'm going to go ahead and select maximum and then select this bottom surface. So let's see, actually I wanted to be in velocity here. So if I change this back to velocity, I'm now just getting the maximum velocity coming out of the faucet anywhere on that output surface. And if I click this graph button, I can also see this graphically. So we can see that as time goes on, from when the simulation started, the max velocity at any point on that output is going upward. And we're now at about 0.3 seconds. We can see average velocity is still climbing. Pretty cool. So now I'm just going to go ahead and enable particles. This allows us to see a representation of what a single particle would look like, how it would be moving at any particular point. And I'm now going to enable cut plane as well. This essentially allows us to see only these particles, so none of the model is being shown between that cut plane and my screen. And I can select and move that using the selection filter. If I click fluid objects, I'm allowed to click this plane. I can drag it back if I want to expose these the joints of these faucets and see see the velocity of my particles, how that's looking. All right, great. So now I'm going to cancel the simulation, and now I'll uncheck transient mode. So now we'll take a look at the steady state functionality that is newly added and improved. All right, we just have to give this a couple seconds to achieve steady state and finish its calculations. And there we go. So we can see that right away now we have this steady state solution that's going to be reached, and it did once again take maybe 15 seconds, but the fact that we now know what this is going to approach in infinite time is very cool. Let's switch this over to temperature. We can now see that after a little load, this is actually all a constant temperature at this point. All this is actually displaying in the same color. We can see our whole range in the legend is 277 on bottom, 277 on top. And even the minor temperature variations we see here are essentially all constant temperature. So when we, in this example, open both valves all the way, we can see that eventually we're getting kind of a warm temperature between the two that's filling our entire faucet, given unlimited time, of course. All right, the last change I'm going to be talking about is a big improvement for stochastic lattices. So the big change, I'll cover, I guess, 4 changes for stochastic lattices, but the big exciting one is that we can actually integrate the results from a simulation when creating a lattice. So what this means is that we can selectively make this lattice denser, more thick, or thinner at certain parts of our model, depending on the needs of the stress that this model will encounter. This is a very cool change if you use stochastic lattices, and very, very exciting from an additive manufacturing standpoint. If you use additive manufacturing, I imagine this feature would save you a good amount of money. In addition to that, we have updated formula-based algorithms. We have the trabecular shape option added, and we can now have solid representations of lattices to use in analysis, so they can act as solid bodies. All right, so for my last demonstration, I'm going to show how this new lattice functionality is used. So we can see I have a part here created in Creo. If I go to the live simulation tab again, we can see I have a structural simulation study created, and I've put a few constraints on this model. So first I placed a fixed constraint on these bottom 2 holes. So this is modeling in real life, just this part being bolted or screwed into a not moving object, and it's just going to be fixed in those 2 places. And then we actually have a moment about this circular spinning type component in the middle. So this is going to be a moment load that's going to be added, and it's going to be putting force and stress on our part. So just going back to the model tab really quick, I'm quickly just going to open design items. And we can see that this design items is going to have materials and bodies all by default. And this part has the material aluminum assigned to it. For this kind of structural simulation stuff we're going to be doing, we do need to designate a material to know how this part is going to react. We can also see we have 2 bodies created. So body 1 is going to be this outside shell, body 2 is this inside component, and body 3 is actually empty, but we can see it's designated as the default body, so anything new we create is going to be placed into body 3. All right, so going back to live simulation, once again, just going to go to performance options. I'll make sure this is all the way to accuracy. Looks good to me. And then I'll click simulates. So this should take about 30 seconds to run. There we go. We can see that this is now going to be showing by default the von Mises stress. So the stress that's going to be inside of our solid model. So I'm just going to change this to megapascals to get more reasonable numbers. And we can see that this ranges from a really tiny amount to about 13 megapascals, depending on where we are in our model. If I enable max and min, we can see that these values, these stress values, are very concentrated in this one place, and we're getting pretty much 0 stress in the middle of our model. So now if I just change this to deformation, we can see that we're going to get some deformation. It's near the top of our model. This isn't a new feature, but just to show we can animate this deformation if we'd like to see how this is going to be moving. Of course, this is exaggerated, but we can make this true deformations if we'd like. So this will be not exaggerated. We can see it barely moves. All right, so now what we're going to want to do is we are going to drop down on this this query area on the ribbon, and we're going to click export numerical results rather. And this is what's going to allow us to export this data to be used in modeling our lattice. So I'm actually not going to do this. I would enter 1,000 and click check, but I'm actually not going to do this right now just because it takes about 5 minutes. I already did it and I've got that file saved. So we can just assume that for this demonstration, I just completed that. All right, so with that simulation work done, I'm going to go back to the model tab and I'm going to create a lattice. This is going to be in the engineering group. Honestly, I can never really find it, so I usually just search lattice in the command search. Once again, we can see that the ribbon here is revamped and updated. That's just another example of a little improvement that was made that we didn't have time to cover. So what we're going to do is replace an entire body with lattice. That's usually, in my mind, the easiest way to do this. I'm going to select body 1, which is going to be that outside geometry. And I'm actually going to make a shell of this body, so that essentially there's going to be a shell, an open space on the inside that we're going to fill with lattice. All right, so changing that thickness, I'm now going to edit my cell type a little bit, just do some modifications. I want to make sure square is selected, that's what I want. And then I'm just going to change this to be 5 in every direction, a little bit smaller cells. Just going to edit my cell fill a little bit as well. I'm going to change this to star, and then I'll make my ball diameter and my cross section size a little bit smaller. So now going into this density tab, this is where we're going to be able to grab that simulation data that we used before. So I click simulation here, and I can just open a file for that. So one thing to note, I saved this as a CSV, so I just have to change the type if I want to be able to find it. And we can see von Mises stress calculated over 1,000 points, lattice demo, that's what I called it. And that's what we would have done just before if we wanted to wait the 5 minutes. So I can just double click and select this. We can see that it lists the case name and the weight factor. I want it to be weighted completely. Now I'm just going to change these values a little bit to the values I found works for me for this model. Yours will probably be different depending on what you have found works for you. But just going to change these a little bit. I'm going to change the representation to simplified rep. And then I'm going to click attached here, and this is now going to regenerate and kind of assign the values that I just assigned. And we'll be able to see in just a second a preview geometry of this lattice. All right, excellent. So it looks like this lattice has been generated for us. I'm going to click OK to complete that feature. This will probably take another second. It's a bit of a complex lattice. And there we go. We can see that if I enable this cross section, just we can see what's going on inside of our part. We can see that our lattice was created. And if you look closely, you'll be able to see that the thickness of each lattice cell, the density of this material is much thicker around these fixed constraints than it is in the middle of our part where we're getting very low von Mises stress. Now, I'm just going to cancel out of this section and go back to our live simulation. And I'm going to run this exact same simulation once again, and we're going to see what happens when we implemented this. All right, so if we give this another second just to load up, we're going to see how this stress has changed. If you remember previously, we had a max stress of about 13 megapascals, and it was very heavily concentrated along these certain points. Now, if I just change this again to megapascals to get into the same units as before, we can see we're going to notice a couple things. So first of all, the max value is actually a lot higher. This is to be expected, essentially because anytime we're making a lattice, we're removing material. So we're taking away a lot of this solid aluminum that would be reducing the stress, that would be absorbing some of that force. I'm sure that was the wrong terminology, but hopefully you know what I mean. But anytime we take away material, this part's going to get less sturdy. The thing that I think is worth noting is that we can see the display here in the graphics window that the stress is much more evenly distributed. We do have a greater overall von Mises stress, and if we look at deformation, it's going to be greater overall as well. But that's to be expected anytime you use a lattice, and really anytime you use additive manufacturing. The goal is just to reduce material in the most effective ways. So the way this is done is it's incorporating that data so that we can make a lattice that uses a very low amount of material, but that still divides the stress very evenly. And if we didn't incorporate these simulation results, we would not be able to obtain these max stresses with this little material. That's really what it comes down to. All right, so that brings us to the end of my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at some of these new features. If you have any technical questions, first of all, we're going to do a little Q&A, so feel free to submit that in the questions section of GoToWebinar. If you have anything else that either is related to this or not, you can reach out to my email. Any kind of sales questions, if you would like to join the upcoming training that we are going to be starting up again as COVID goes away, feel free to reach out. And additionally, I would recommend everybody check out our YouTube channel if you haven't. It has all of these webinars with covering a whole lot of topics. If you can't find something there, then be sure to reach out, and we will probably cover it in a future session. Okay, I have a question. Is there a readily available stable release out for download at this point? Yes. So this was, I want to say about a month ago, but I'm not entirely sure. It may have been less than that. It is a full release, Creo 8.0.0.0. I've been playing around with it for a few weeks and haven't noticed any bugs or anything like that. I was also, I used the beta software for a little bit, and that was honestly pretty good as well. So yes, it's available for download. If you have a perpetual license, you are able to get it now, and I would recommend you do so. All right, looks like no more questions so far. It makes sense because it's new, new software, new material. But I'm sure that if any of you start messing around with this, you may have some questions. So feel free, once again, to reach out. My email can be found on the screen. I hope you all enjoyed this Boundary webinar. It's been a pleasure. I hope you all learned something new about Creo 8 and you're excited to try it out. Thanks so much for attending, and have a great rest of the week.